The National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, NEHAWU, in South Africa has vowed to relentlessly fight any planned retrenchments in the public service following Finance Minister Ino Godongwane announcing that the country's government may have to consider retrenching some staff since it will take several years to bring its wage bill to more sustainable levels. The Finance Minister says the government will have to reduce the wage bill despite unions requesting an increase in salaries this year, as all salaries accounts for almost a third of state expenditure. Although the minister made not mention of whether the state currently is intentioning to have employees being laid off outrightly, but then when that may occur, they are also looking at the fact that how many of its 1.3 million employees might be affected. NEHAWU issued a stern warning to the minister and government, stating that the union would resist any such plans. Now, the idea that public service is overstaffed and has to be reduced was rejected by the union. It raised concerns about the public sector's understaffing in health, education and policing as a result of austerity measures, which has weakened the state's ability to provide quality services to the growing population. It also highlighted the fact that because of staff shortages, as it were, members of the public must go above and beyond to provide quality services. Now, joining me from Johannesburg, South Africa is Lwazi Nkolonzi, National Spokesperson, National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, NEHAWU. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon to your viewers at home.
Now, is there a possibility that what the finance minister in South Africa is announcing that the government is proposing or planning on laying off staff, do you call that a bluff or you think is a threat made real?
Look, we as NEHAWU have over the years seen numerous indications from the government that one, they intend on cutting down the public wage bill. Two, they also have plans to retrench workers in the public service. So what the minister had said is a continuation of the posture by government towards the public service and especially workers. And we are not taking those sentiments that have been shared by the minister very lightly. And we believe that they are quite reckless, in fact. And looking at the state of things here in South Africa, and they've got a huge bearing on us as public servants. So we are quite concerned about those statements that have been articulated by the minister, that there are plans to lay off workers at this current moment. And of course, we're not going to take that lying. We are going to fight and make sure that none of that happens. We're not going to allow any public servants to be retrenched by our government.
I would like us to be critical and honest in our assessments, looking at the fact that South African government, or South Africa as it were, has gone through so many economic turbulence. We call it economic downturns as it were, when you talk about high unemployment, load shedding, and of course the pandemic that has crippled so many economies, even while some other economies are trying to come up to speed. Now, do you think that the government actually has the money to afford the increase in the wages that you are asking for?
Look, we are saying firstly that if you can just go to your archive and search about our situation here in South Africa, you will find out that our members, especially public servants, were not paid any salary increment for the past 3 years by government. And they've had no increase, none whatsoever, on their salary base, for such a long time. This is amidst all the economic hardships that are facing our people in the country. This is amidst a rising inflation rate in the country that has seen rising prices of food, rising prices of petrol, electricity, and the basic necessities that are required by our people to survive. And amidst all of these things, our members and the public servants have not gotten any increment, nothing whatsoever to cushion them against the economic hardships that are faced by our people in the country. So for government now to come back and say that there is no money for our members, yet at the same time, politicians are getting a 3% increment that is going to be backdated for 2 years. Now, our politicians are earning exorbitant amounts of money. And it's ridiculous that they would get 3%, and yet at the same time, our members are getting nothing less than what they deserve. And hence, we are saying we do not agree to the notion that there is no money that government can afford the demands that we are placing. We do not believe that. We believe that there is money. It's just that money is not used and utilized properly and effectively. There is money that has been wasted through corruption, through wasteful and irregular expenditure by the government. And all of these are contained in reports that have been presented by various institutions such as the Auditor General. So there is money certainly, but government is just not willing to come to the table and place better offer to workers at the current moment.
Well, we'll still talk about what needs to be done to cut wastages, but then if the government is proposing to the assembly that it can give 3%, to the politicians that it can offer them 3%, and the government is saying what they can afford is 3.5%. Don't you think that is fair, looking at rationality and reasonability on what is achievable at the moment?
It's not fair at all. If you were to do a scale in terms of how much our workers, our members and workers in the public service earn, vis-a-vis the 3% that politicians are giving themselves. A minister in the country earns above easily over 2 million per annum. Now, a level 1 worker in the public service does not earn more than 250,000. So for you to say you're offering a minister 3% in 2 million, and you're offering a public servant 3% who's earning 250,000 per annum, that is nothing. Yet at the same time, the percentage that you are offering is below the inflation rate currently, which stands at 7%. So you can't offer something that is below the inflation rate. In fact, there is no increment, none whatsoever, that the government is offering, because that is below the inflation rate. And our workers are not going to be able to afford anything that is below the inflation rate at the moment. So it is unfair for government to say that they are offering us 3%, yet at the same time they're also offering politicians and public office bearers the same percentage as public servants, which are in 2 different scales of payment and salaries. So we do not see this as quite reasonable. It's actually quite unreasonable from government to expect our members to accept such a ridiculous and an insulting offer to them.
So now that you are hammering on remuneration disparity, what do you think? You also talked about wastages, so to speak. So what do you think the government can do to bring parity, and of course to ensure that it's able to plug the loopholes where funds are, fizzling away?
One thing that our government can do, firstly, is cut down on wastages in the different departments. There's an issue of goods and services that they procure and that they waste billions. They can cut down on that. 2, put in place mechanisms to monitor and watch and guard public finances, that there is no corruption that comes in place. The acts of corruption is cancer to society. And this is where we note how money is wasted recklessly by our government. And 3, I mean, you look at how much your senior government officials are earning, and which is ridiculous. And so there are mechanisms that government can put into place. I mean, recently we just were informed that ministers are getting huge packs, unreasonable packs, and on top of that, they're earning quite well. So those are the things that the government and the president and his ministers should cut on. They should start leading by example, cut on the packs that they are earning, and also make sure that we employ more people in the public service to deliver quality services to our people, not to say you're going to retrench our members. So we are not going to agree to that.
So then, what alternatives in terms of advice are you tabling to the government instead of retrenchments?
Look, firstly, we have said that the public service in South Africa is understaffed. And there's a huge shortage of staff in health, in education, in policing. So the alternatives that the government should do is to employ more people so that our country and our citizens can get quality service. I mean, the government should be able to, at this moment, to say that the unemployment rate in South Africa stands at 44%. If we are going to be retrenching more workers, we are actually saying that we are actually quite happy with the unemployment rate, and we are actually contributing it to increase. So what the government should do is to employ more personnel in the public service. But not only that, they should also get rid of the austerity program that they've embarked on, which has seriously impacted on the state of the healthcare system, the education sector, and also has had a bearing in terms of the economy in this country. Thirdly, the government should rapidly run an industrialization program that will get our people to be employed, that will get the economy to be rejuvenated and to get the economy functioning once more so that it creates a suitable environment for our people to flourish in. Those are the alternatives that the government can in the immediate short term look at to try and come up with better solutions to the crisis that we are confronting with. But retrenchments and getting rid of workers and cutting workers is not the solution at the moment.
Well, it is understandable that you are making demands from the government, but then there will need to be compromises from the union also. But before I touch on that, of course, we know that when two elephants fight, it is the grass underneath that suffers. If the government decides to be adamant and follow through with the retrenchments, laying off of workers as it were, how do you think this will impact the livelihoods of the citizens and, of course, the workers who will be out of jobs?
It's going to affect everyone. It's going to affect the workers. It's going to affect the citizens of this country who are expecting quality service. They're not going to be getting those quality services if workers in the public service are not have been retrenched and there's a shortage of staff. Already, if you look at the healthcare system, our healthcare system is close to collapsing because there's a shortage, a serious shortage of staff. So if you are going to retrench more workers in the healthcare system, what are you saying to our citizens? That they do not deserve quality healthcare services. That's what you're implying. So it's going to have a bearing on the workers, but in the broader scheme of things, it's going to have a huge bearing in society as a whole. Our citizens are going to be drastically affected. There's not going to be a proper education system. There's not going to be proper healthcare, and the policing services are going to be inadequate. So amidst all of those things, this is what the government is actually saying to South Africans, that if we do go ahead with this plan of retrenching, bear in mind that we are not going to get the quality services that we deserve from the public and from the government. That's what this whole thing means. And it's going to affect our members and workers, but also it's going to affect citizens of this country as a whole.
All right, moving forward, finally on our discussion, Wazi, what do you think the union can do in terms of compromise? Are you pushing for maybe some sort of extended dialogue, or there's something that you feel you can do to ensure that on both sides there is a compromise that actually leads to a concrete agreement?
Workers have compromised a lot over the past 5 years. If you look at the increases that we have received, and you look at the amount of work that we have done, and the extra mile that we have gone to service our people, and especially during the period under the COVID pandemic, where we lost a lot of members. And yet at the same time, the government did not do anything to incentivize our members. They did not even give a token of appreciation to our members. We had to fight during that moment for our members to be provided PPEs and protective equipment. And our members carried out that job of saving our citizens diligently so. And this occurred at the backdrop of them not having gotten any salary increment from the government. So our members have sacrificed a lot, and our members are still continuing sacrifices.
All right.
But we're not going to compromise on this one. We are not going to compromise. We are quite clear. We are not going to compromise on this one. We are not going to allow the government to retrench workers in the public service.
All right.
That we're not going to do. We are going to fight against those plans by the government. And we're going to take the fight to the government head on.
Invariably, this is going to be a showdown between the unions and the government, but then we are actually hopeful that both sides will be able to come to concrete terms and look at how visible they can bring about parity in terms of what the union is asking for and what the government can offer. Maybe there could just be a middle ground somewhere in between so that workers can resume back to work and, of course, the economy can flourish. Thank you so much, Adbazi, for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, the union workers in South Africa are asking for 6.5% in increase of wages, but then the government is saying what it can offer is between 3 and 3.5%. Just as Razia said, it's like there's going to be a showdown, but then we will continue to monitor the situation and bring you up to speed with it, even as we hope that there's a logical conclusion to this impasse. Let's quickly go on a break, and when we return, we'll be concluding with NC4 to watch.